Thanks for listening to this episode of the Write, Publish, Market podcast. I know just how busy business owners and CEOs' schedules are, and I'm grateful you've taken some time out of yours to spend with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, take a quick screenshot and share it on social to let others know you're listening. Use the hashtag Write, Publish, Market to spread the love. So welcome, Ashley. I'm so happy to talk to you today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you as well. So thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. As soon as I follow you on Threads, that's how I found you. And I was like, I have to have her on the podcast. Like, this is a topic we've never talked about on the podcast before because it is not my zone of genius for sure.
Okay.
But everything that you talk about, I'm like, oh, we got to dig into that.
Good. Yeah. It's a topic where most people aren't talking about it the way in which I am. And so I'm excited to spread the word. So
yeah. Awesome. Okay. So give us like the real quick and dirty, like who you are, who you serve, all that kind of stuff. Not your formal like bio, but just like the quick elevator pitch.
Okay. So I'm Ashley Shepard and I'm an author, a book marketing strategist, and a self-publishing consultant. And so I help authors to be able to sell more books, reach more readers, make more money, and change more lives. And so with that, I am someone who came into authorship not the traditional path. I have a background in education, and it became something where as that no longer became an option for me, then books and helping other authors became something that's at the forefront. And so I'm very passionate about working with self-published authors because it's something where I feel like there's a lot of bad information out there and a lot of inaccurate information in the world of publishing. And there are a lot of scammers. And so it's hard to know what's good advice, what's efficient for you, and what's actually effective. And so that's the area that I kind of focus on.
I love that. I think there are a lot of scammers out there. Self-publishing has come a long way, but it still, I feel like, has a long way to go.
Yeah.
Most of the listeners to this podcast, I mean, I'm assuming they've never filled out a survey or anything, but because they're people in my world, I assume that they are business owners self-publishing by choice because they like the control that self-publishing, the control in the timeline that self-publishing affords them. And I would love to start with just sort of like foundationally, like we understand what pre-orders do for a traditionally published book, right? They help with like, bestseller status, like all that kind of stuff, bookstore sales, et cetera, et cetera. But talk a little bit about, well, let's start at the very beginning, like definition wise, is a pre-order the same as a pre-sale? Like educate us on that.
Okay. Yeah. So, and you'll hear me say them interchangeabably. They are the same thing. Typically in the business world, not necessarily the author world, even though listeners
overlap. Yep.
Collide and overlap. Yep. So I typically say pre-sale because I came into books from a previous business. And so pre-sale, pre-order, they mean the same thing. I'm not sure why the author community has decided pre-order, likely because Amazon uses the word pre-order, and that's typically the big dog in self-publishing, and also for traditional publishers, they have their books too. And so it's the same thing, but it's basically the process of having your book be available before it's officially released. And so that can look like before you place it on Amazon for the general public to purchase, or really just anybody outside of the pre-order who hasn't decided to tap into the pre-order period or experience for your book. So.
Okay. So why would a self-publishing author want to take advantage of this? Since there is no maybe like official quote unquote launch date like there is for a traditionally released book. Like, let's talk about some of the benefits for self-publishing authors.
So when you are someone who's self-publishing, you get to control everything, which is beautiful, and it can also be overwhelming. And so having a pre-order is a way to basically tap into getting to that profit point before your book is even out. And it's something where I started out as a self-published author. I had just had a pay cut of about $5,000 after having a baby. And I wanted to release a book to help other moms. And so obviously I did not have money to pay for publishing. And so I thought, okay, what can I do? And that's how I tapped into pre-orders. And so now at this point, it's become a game of like, okay, well, how much can I make in my pre-order process? How quickly can I get to the point of making back all my expenses from publishing?
Yeah.
And so it's something that it gives you the benefit of being able to see the rewards and the fruits of your labor earlier, as opposed to having to wait years to, you hear traditionally published authors say, earn out their advance, or even for self-published authors, like, oh, okay, I finally got to the break-even point. Well, if you can get to that point before your book is even officially available for people to have it, why not? Like, it just is something.
Why not? Yes.
Yeah. Because you're already going to be doing the work as a part of your book launch. And so why not start collecting money at that point within reason? And there's certain boundaries, of course, you want to set, and you have to be a certain type of person to finish your book. And there's certain points you want to start your pre-order, which depend on your risk tolerance. However, saying all that, even if it's something where it's just a few weeks ahead of time, a few months ahead of time, it's worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah. I have never, ever heard anyone say in my 20 years of working in books and talking about publishing, heard someone say, create your own advance like you do. And like, it's so smart, Ashley. It really is. And I think that a lot of people they just don't think of it like that. They think of it, oh, I'm taking on the investment if I'm self-publishing, and I'm going to worry about earning it back, whenever I earn it back. I know it's going to be a long process, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you're teaching people to think about it differently, which I think is the first step in actually, doing it differently. So I love that. I love that. Yeah. Well, because I think that's one of the things too that deters some people from self-publishing, right? Is the expense. Yes. I find that less so for my one-on-one clients who are business owners are more used to they're more comfortable with the risk, right? And bigger expenditures, et cetera, than a lot of self-publishing authors maybe are or have the luxury to be. So figuring out a way to, recoup some of that before the book is even out there, and then roll it into, if you want to, a bigger marketing budget or different marketing activities later down the road is, super smart. I love that. Okay. So let's talk logistics then. So we know now why we should be doing it, but how does it actually work? Because I know there's lots of ways and that you have a preferred way. So let's talk about that a little bit, like what our options are and then what your preferred way is and why.
Yeah. So the way that I prefer to do it is to host pre-orders on your own website. And I'm going to say this as a caveat. I understand that people do things differently. I understand that putting your pre-order for your ebook up on Amazon is a very popular strategy. I understand that there's also options to put your physical copy of your book up on Amazon. But for most self-published authors, it's a roundabout way to do it. And there's a higher risk of errors. I know about the Ingram Spark option, have that loop through, things like that. But none of those typically are the most profitable options for self-published authors or independent authors. And the reason for that is because of the ability to control the information and to control the rate at which you get paid. And so when you're hosting your order on your own website, especially if you're a business owner, you understand customer data, customer tracking, being able to follow up, being able to include upsells, cross-sells, downsells, being able to add additional experiences to your pre-order process are all things that are going to make it more profitable first, but also increase the experience that you have for your readers. So for example, for the book that I'm working on right now, teaching people how to do pre-orders this way, it's called Self-Publishing. So it's called Profitable Self-Publishing. And so the strategies that I'm using, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in a bit, but one of the ways that I'm adding additional experiences for my readers is to be able to include a private pop-up podcast for them. So that way they're able to go behind the scenes of the actual real life pre-order that I'm doing in real time. Now, if I were to have my pre-order on Amazon, I would only be able to have the Amazon KDP. And I say Amazon, but I mean Amazon KDP because we know there's Amazon Sellers, Amazon Advantage, all these different options. But for Amazon KDP, which is the predominant choice for most self-published authors, you're only able to put up the pre-order version. And often you are kind of coerced into making it free or making it really low cost even after it's released. Whereas if you are doing a pre-order on your site, you can offer the physical copy, digital copy. For my last book, I did Spiral, premium hardcover, and you're able to add additional options that allow you to do offset printing where you wouldn't be able to do that with Amazon KDP. And the alternative option of doing it is using Advantage or Sellers, but then you're having to give a huge % of your profit to Amazon in that way. And so hosting it on your site gives you the flexibility to add different offers, different options, different levels of packages, and it makes it so that you can get paid quicker. One of the biggest drawbacks is having to wait that 60, 90-day period from these print-on-demand sites where you might put your book on. Whereas if you host it on your own website, and that reminds me of crowdfunding as well. Let me come back to that. So if you host If you host your book on your own website, you can get paid within a day or two if you're using Stripe or other payment processors that quick turnaround times. And so even if you're not someone who is concerned about the cost of self-publishing, it's also just a really dope and boss move to just be like, I created my own advance as an author before my book was done. Like, my book is profitable before it's even been released to general retailers. And
love that.
As far as crowdfunding, I know that's another popular option, and it does work. You have a really huge following, or if you are spending a ton of time and energy getting those folks over to sites like Kickstarter and some other options. However, why not put that same time and energy into your own website? So that way people are more likely to come over to your neck of the woods. You're increasing SEO, you're increasing traffic to your own site. And you don't have to worry about whether or not you actually meet your campaign goal, because on specifically Kickstarter, if you don't meet your goal, you don't get any of the money.
Yeah.
Which is bananas to me once I found that out. It's like, this is insane.
Yeah.
And so the fact that even if 5 people pre-order your book, you can fulfill your order for just those 5 people. You still get to keep your money. Everybody's happy. And so I really focus on the method of using your site and then having a book launch.
Hey there, business owner and aspiring or published author.
Well.
Sorry to interrupt this episode. Just wanted to check in and see if you're subscribed to Coffee and Commas, my email newsletter, where I share behind the scenes, industry info, and much more about writing, publishing, and marketing a book for your business. Sign up at bit.ly/coffee and commas sign up. That's all lowercase. Now back to the show.
Okay. I do want to talk about timeline, but I think that, like you're saying, that, I mean, just as a business owner, one of the things that drives me nuttiest about Amazon is, and I mean, my book is on Amazon, caveat, but it's also in other places, including my own site. Because I get it. There are some people are they're going to Amazon. It's easy, whether we like it or not, it's easy. That's what they're doing. But to not get any data is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And I get they can. So why? I mean, they can do it that way. So why wouldn't they? Yeah. But I mean, I think we forget that just because, yes, that is a book selling platform or selling platform, I guess, really these days, that doesn't mean that they're not in the business of, promoting an author. Like that your business is not their business model. Yeah, I think that's super, super smart. Okay, let's talk about timeline, because does it matter on the type of book? Is it just sort of get it done when you can get it done? Or is there a specific sort of timeline that you recommend?
Yeah. So, and just to go back to what you said, Amazon, my books are also on Amazon. It's the world's largest bookstore. We're going to take advantage of that too.
Right.
But for that pre-order period, let's focus on it. So for timelines, it does depend on the type of book that you have, but it also depends on risk tolerance. So if you are doing your first pre-order, I would not recommend you announcing it before you finish drafting your book, because there are certain things that if you've never done a pre-order before, or if you've never published before, things are going to pop up. You want to account for certain amounts of time to be able to do certain things, and shipping errors, all that kind of stuff. And things typically take longer than you expect them to take. I know you think, oh yeah, I can get that done in a week. Especially as an author, you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to knock out. I'm just going to sit down, and that doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
People. And so also, if you're doing a children's book, you typically are not going to want to wait, or you're not going to want to start your pre-order until after your illustrations are done.
Sure.
And I say that because illustrators are, how can I say this politely? They are sometimes inconsistent and flighty in terms of communication, and it can be hard to track them down at times. And I've heard horror stories where people have their illustrator just fell off the face of the earth. And so if you're doing a children's book or something that has heavy illustrations or heavy photography, so for example, potentially working with a client who is doing a book about scalp care. And so they're taking pictures of people's scalps, hair doctors, essentially. And so until you have all your photographs, things of that sort, if you're doing a cookbook, until you have all of your pictures, things like that, wait to announce it. So that way you have a clearer runway to get to the finish line. If your book is a nonfiction text, which I assume most of your authors are going to be producing, then I would suggest to get your pre-orders going to where you're opening the cart around the time of where you get your first draft of edits back. So typically that'll be your development edit. And that doesn't mean that you can't say anything before that period. Of course, you still can tease things out of, oh, I just finished drafting my book. or I just got this edit back, or I'm excited about my next book topic. You can still do those kinds of things. However, typically after that developmental editing period, it's more of a, you've reached the climax, you're kind of on the downhill to getting the book finished.
Yeah.
And so you're also going to need a little bit more motivation to kind of get through that last period. And so that's typically what I recommend. And so that looks different for different people, depending upon how long your book is. I typically do pre-order periods anywhere from 6 weeks 2 weeks was the shortest one I did, but there was a reason for that. I don't remember if it's your first time.
Okay.
Wasn't my first time. It was a seasonal book that needed to be on Amazon within a certain time period to tap into kind of a worldwide sales situation. So, and then the shorter timeline after that, I would recommend would be about 6 weeks. Anywhere from like 6 to 12 weeks to me is a good run. There are authors who do pre-orders for a year, and I say more power to you. But I know as someone who likes to, I'm a quick mover, I'm a quick talker.
That's a long time. That's a long time.
It's a long time to stay dedicated and a long time to keep your audience in the loop, because the strategies I recommend is where you're giving weekly updates, daily updates in some cases. And so if you're doing that for a year, you likely are going to get exhausted. And so typically anywhere between 6 to 12 weeks is what I recommend.
Okay. That's a good sweet spot. Yeah. That's a long, 12, like a year is a long time for you to keep people informed, but also to keep people engaged and excited. Like, that's a long time. Okay. So 6 to 12 weeks. And then what, so then once, like, let's say the pre-order's over, the book is launched, then what happens? Anything different, like post-release, if we've done a pre-order versus not, or?
So I typically recommend just continuing with your launch period. So however long you decide for that to be. And I do know people do like long haul launches where they use the next year to bring in more sales. And so it's a part of the process where it's kind of just nestled inside of the launch period. It's just something that you might start a little earlier than you typically would for your launch. And in terms of afterwards, you might share stats, or you, of course, want to follow up with people and thank them for purchasing the book ahead of time. Because really, we live in a society where people are used to getting things next day, sometimes same day. And so for someone to wait weeks or months to get your thing, or to get your books in particular, it's something you definitely want to show appreciation for. So if you're able to do handwritten cards, depending upon how many pre-orders you have, or writing bonuses to them as a part of the pre-order period. So for example, the private podcast I mentioned is a bonus that people get for ordering during the pre-order. That's the only way it's accessible. And then also I'm doing additional monthly masterclasses for those folks. So that way they're able to have something to kind to keep them engaged, like you mentioned, while they're waiting. And then they are, of course, going to be on the list of the people who get my next thing that's tied to it. And so really just keeping them focused, keeping them engaged, letting them know different ways you can help them and supporting them along the process, especially if your book is something that helps people get a transformation. Another option is to include talking about those upsells and downsells. And so to include a course or something that's an ongoing thing like a book club or some type of accountability group. And so that's something I'm doing right now with my book. And so it's called Preorder Profits, and it's an accelerator, 8 weeks. And I'm actually walking through the pre-order process with people who signed up.
Oh, perfect.
And so that's something that's helpful because I'm able to see real-time insights from folks who are going through the process with me. And I've done it before individually. This is my first time doing it as a group. And so having a teaching background, I'm like, if I can manage 30 kids, I can manage people in a group setting, 30 per class period. So something where if you are wanting to put in testimonials, if you don't already have them for this topic, let's say this is a new topic, you haven't necessarily had a ton of people kind of go through your process with you using your systems or frameworks, it's a great way to be able to tap into that, or to get fresh testimonials, or to be able to get insight things that you might have forgotten to include in your book because it's just so automated because you're the expert at that thing. And so any kind of thing that you can include, any kind of bonus or extra activity or experience is always great to keep people motivated.
Yeah, I love that. We just did an episode. I did a solo episode on sales multipliers, upsells, downsells, tripwires, cross sell, all that kind of stuff. And that's the kind of stuff you really can't easily do on another platform. So that's, another reason to, host it yourself. I bundle my book with my $9.99 paperback, so $10 with like a $40 masterclass. So it takes a $10 sale to a $50 sale just so easily with like a code on the back end of my website. It's a no-brainer, right? If you can find, again, these listeners are business owners. So certainly they have, courses, master classes, things like that to, to be thinking about. So smart.
Yeah. You just made me think of something else. Don't assume that it has to be something brand new that you created for your book as the upsell. So some of the items I'm using, I've used it with clients before. It's just adding it onto the book launch experience. And it's new to these people because they either have been a client previously or they haven't purchased this thing from me.
Right. Yeah. Tell me one thing that I haven't asked that I should have asked, because I feel like I've only scratched the surface with what I know to even ask.
That's a good question. Let's see.
What do you see working really well right now? Like, what's a best practice that like maybe we haven't even thought of that we should be like, oh yeah, like the private podcast, super smart. Mm-hmm. I've seen that used in other ways, but not with a book launch.
Yeah. So I think really factoring in the idea that you're creating an experience with your book launch. So not just that you're selling the book. And as business owners, we know, okay, eventually we want people to get to that top end of the funnel. And I don't know, did I call it top end, but it's really the bottom. We want people to get to a high ticket item or whatever the case may be. And so really taking a step back and spending time planning as to how each of those different components go together and how they fit and how they coordinate. And all of that, of course, goes back to your target audience, which we know, okay, focus on who you're talking to. But think about what kind of things would help them to be able to read the book, review the book, and recommend the book. Because once you are able to get them to do those three things, then it becomes where your marketing is doing its own thing for itself.
Yeah.
So I was reading in a book, Write Useful Books. One of the quotes in there is that the point of marketing is to not have to keep marketing. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, that's simple, but yes, that is the point. Like,
right.
The point.
Yeah.
And I have books like that too, is where my second book, I don't typically have to market it. It just sells itself because you created where you have enough reviews. It's something where it's a conversation piece. People are able to continue to be able to recommend it. And so it's not something I have to heavily market.
Yeah.
But that takes time. And so it does take time to get there. Why not have it? Why not get it there faster by accelerating it with a pre-order experience and a book launch experience that really leaves people talking?
Yeah. Love that. Okay. Read, review, recommend, the 3 R's. I like that. That's really good. Okay. All right. I mean, I'm sure as soon as we click end on this recording, I'm going to have 85 more questions.
Okay.
So stay tuned for part 2, everybody. All right, Ashley, I don't let anybody leave the podcast without giving me a book recommendation. And I mean, we're book people, so I know you have probably a gazillion.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Just one or?
Well, you can give me a couple. I'll take a couple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one, hopefully you can see with my background. This is Uncloned Marketing. And so this is by Audrey Richmond. She's one of my mentors. And so she focuses on helping business owners to be able to be the obvious choice in their industry by creating uncloned, meaning unique experiences. And so that's something, especially in the online space, it's hard to stand out. And so making sure that you're doing something that is different, unique, eye-catching is so important. And so she has a ton of great resources, but this is one of the first business books that I read that really opened my mind into the way in which I could show up online, especially and in person, but in particular, since I focus on online, to be able to stand out from others who are just all doing the same thing. And then the other book is by a friend that I met in college. He's a kind of like a motivational content creator. And it is a bunch of dope affirmations for my homies. And so his name is Alex Nemo Hands, and he's very consistent in the online space in terms of posting motivational things. And it's just a book of affirmations and quotes to kind of remember. And so, for example, I don't have to have it all together to be loved. And as business owners, we are our own worst critics, and we are the ones who beat ourselves up the most. And so one of his other quotes that he came out with after the book came out is, imposters never have the syndrome. And I have to think about that and remember that, okay, a lot of business owners struggle with imposter syndrome. And it's like, okay, but really the people that are scamming, they're never worried about scamming. So if you're not a scammer, then keep doing what you're doing. So.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like that. I have that. Now that book I have not heard of. I have heard of Uncloned. I have not read it, but I've heard of it. And I love the cover. I love the cover. So,
very cool.
Okay. Those are 2 good recommendations. We're going to put those in the show notes along with all of your information, but tell listeners, if they're not reading the show notes right now, what's the best place for them to find and connect with you? Where do you like to connect with people?
Yeah. So as far as handles on social media, I'm Shep Publishing all platforms. And I know we connected on Threads. Threads is my favorite right now because it's just so easy to connect with your audience. And so if you're a business owner and you're not on Threads, please hop on it, especially before they start running ads to the platform. Next year, please get on it.
It's coming. Yeah.
It is coming. But in terms of the algorithm, it's just so easy to find people and to find your readers and your audience. And so definitely love Threads. And then also Facebook is the oldie but goodie. And so I love that as well. And then if you are someone who likes videos or just likes to listen to audios, then I do also have a YouTube channel that has tons of content helping you to be able to publish profitably and to be able to reach your readers in a way that doesn't feel as stressful and doesn't feel as much work as it can be when you're trying to sell to everybody, because everybody's not your customer. So.
Everybody's not your customer. Yes. But ease right now, I think, especially right now, everybody's like tensions are high with the way the world is. And burnout, holidays, et cetera, all the things. So ease sounds good. And I'm going to write down on a Post-it note that quote about imposters don't have the syndrome, because that's good. I'm glad you shared that. That was good. So, well, thank you. Thank you for being my guest. This was fantastic. I learned a ton, and I know that I'm speaking for listeners too. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if this is something that you are looking to learn more about the pre-order process for your books, to be able to publish profitably and to use your platform to spread the word, then I definitely encourage you to check out my upcoming release and pre-order, because it's about pre-order. So we're going to have a pre-order.
Yeah, pre-orders.
Pre-order my book at profitableselfpublishing.com.
Awesome. I'm gonna pre-order that book because I need to learn. I need to learn everything. I did not do a pre-order for my book in the last edition, but I'm gonna rectify it this time and do it the right way. So thank you, Ashley. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jody.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Write, Publish, Market podcast. I know just how busy business owners and CEOs' schedules are, and I'm grateful you've taken some time out of yours to spend with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, take a quick screenshot and share it on social to let others know you're listening. Use the hashtag WritePublishMarket to spread the love.